A Swift Kicking Ass, Episode 11.
Welcome to a Swift Kicking the Ass podcast, hosted by lifelong friends Tom Stewart and John Curran. Today's episode is a special feature covering Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and this is a special edition of a Swift Kicking Ass podcast. I'm joined with my lifelong friend John Curran, and today we're going to talk about Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. We're continuing on our series, and we're talking about Law 5, which is so much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. John?
Okay. How you doing, Tom?
Good, man.
So, let me just read you what it says here. The judgment is, reputation is the cornerstone of power. Through reputation alone, you can intimidate and win. Once it slips, however, you are vulnerable, and you will be attacked on all sides. Make your reputation unassailable. Always be alert to potential alerts and thwart them before they happen. Meanwhile, learn to destroy your enemies by opening holes in their own reputations. Then stand aside and let public opinion hang them. Pretty deep stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what it is? That's
It's
all you
high
have to
school.
do is any political, well, also political advertisements. I mean, every political advertisements, talks about, how bad the other guy is, and it opens them up for the audience to be like, yeah, that guy sucks. You're right. He didn't, he said he was going to give $10 million to education, and he did not do it. They're absolutely right. He sucks.
Yeah, and then in the back rooms, they're making deals.
Yes.
So they're all in bed together. And just like in high school, like I mentioned, I was thinking as I was reading this chapter, I was thinking about the power of labels and how there were kids who were labeled the bad kids in junior high school. I don't think it was elementary school, but in junior high school, they're bad kids. Stay away from them, and they're doing all this and doing that. And to be honest, I was pretty much doing the same things that they were. I was just never caught, I guess, maybe doing those things. So I never got labeled as a bad kid, and I got good grades, and I did well in school. Maybe that wasn't true for them, but I think that those labels, they get attached at a young age, and they stick with you.
Well, in high school, it was very easy to, you had the kids that hung out at the back gate and smoked cigarettes. So, of course, automatically you were a burnout, whether you were truly, a burnout and did drugs or anything. You might have smoked cigarettes, but if you were seen back there hanging out at the back gate, that's what people assumed you were.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, and think about girls. Think about all the things that you've heard about this girl or that girl back in high school. Was it true? Uh, Maybe, maybe not. I mean, reputation, I know in a lot of cases the reputation didn't hold up. At least maybe for me it didn't hold up.
And there was some girls that, unfortunately, it was just their name. It had nothing to do with their actions whatsoever. But the poor girls, people make a twist on names, and I'll just say this, and it had nothing to do with her being, uh, loose or anything like that. It was honestly her name, and it was Kimberly Head, because people's favorite name was to say, "Hey, Kimmy Head, give me head."
Yeah,
Kimmy for short.
yeah, and very very nice girl as I remember.
Yeah,
And
it's just kids being jerks.
yeah, I agree. But how others see you and how you are portrayed, to others, it does have a lasting impact on you as well and how you see yourself. So, if you grow up and everyone's telling you that you're bad and you're stupid and all these negative things, uh, that can take a toll on you. So in that regard, I think reputation, it does matter. Um, how you appear to others, it does count. as much as you don't want to admit it. I read something recently. Actually, I didn't really read the article. I saw the headline, and it was I think on CNN.com talking about how beautiful people do better in court. And looks, there is a bias for people and the way they look. And let's just face it too, the old cliche, don't judge a book by its cover. So many of us do that. And what I have learned is that some of the meanest looking people are the nicest people. And I've learned not to judge people by their judge a book by their cover.
Well, also talking about reputation, it also matters who you associate with. Because sometimes if you're associating with people that have a bad reputation, you automatically take on that reputation by association.
Yeah, I remember back when I was doing an administrative residency or an internship at a hospital, one of my first. And my boss was married to a lady in the same department. They were both department heads, and he was having an affair with with his secretary. And obviously this all came out. I had no idea what was happening or that they were doing anything, in the back room, but they were. And I remember when he resigned, it was news to me, but a lot of people would look at me, as being guilty. And I had nothing to do with it. I knew nothing of it, but people looked at me differently after that. Like you said, guilt by association.
Yeah, I still think I get some of that at my work. You talk about bosses, and I'm not going to mention this one boss, but I had a boss that, was very loose with the ladies, and he had a girlfriend. And one day I'm sitting, I had a cubicle right in front of his office, and the girl goes into the office, and he shuts the door, and all you hear is, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get up and leave. It's disgusting. And then another time, I'm I'm talking to a friend. He goes, "Yeah, I'm waiting for this guy. He's off screwing some girl, and we got a place to be." And so I go, "Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that." And it was, he was talking about my boss. So I go out. I'm going to go to lunch. So I used sometimes I would eat lunch in my vehicle at work. So I brought my lunch that day. I was walking to my truck, and there's a car on right next to me. And I glanced down, and what do I see? My boss making out with this girl in the car right next to me. I was like, oh my God. I pretended I didn't see him, and I started up. I drove around in circles because I didn't even know where to go, because the area where I work is so congested, and it's not like there's a lot of parks or anything. So I think I ate my lunch driving around in circles.
Yeah, when you see things like that, that is reality and that is true, and you know that the reputation stands up to the truth. But what about other times when we have a perception that does not really equal reality? What comes to mind is when people have big expensive houses or expensive cars, maybe they're wearing a Rolex, they really look wealthy. But in my experience, I found that that's not necessarily the case. They could be, up to their eyeballs in debt, and maybe the bank owns the house, and they put up a good front. People perceive them as being one way, and that's not the truth at all. It's not the truth. It's just a facade. So,
Well, I
that
think we all have gone through that, even as kids. Do you remember, like, we would listen to, like, ZZ Top's Sharp Dressed Man, and you try to dress up, and you try to, you go to the thrift store and buy some suits or some polos and stuff like that, and you go, yeah, I'm rocking now, baby, because I look like a sharp dressed man, but you had maybe $15 in your bank account.
Oh yeah, or lived in your parents' house in the basement.
Yeah. I actually did that at one time, but I was much older.
I remember, Tom. We have stories about that as well.
And
Uh,
I wasn't 39 living in my mom's basement.
um, okay, let me just look through the notes here. Friedrich Nietzsche, this comes from the book, Friedrich Nietzsche says it's easier to cope with a bad conscience than with a bad reputation.
True.
And we know that people's reputations can be destroyed, and as you discussed, Tom, in politics it happens all the time. But a lot of people don't realize, and it's brought forward in this book, about Edison, Thomas Edison, and Nicholas Tesla. And, both brilliant minds, but Edison really played a large role in this, in breaking up, or creating a reputation for Tesla that really was not all that favorable.
Yeah, there was a whole debate, and I remember this story long before, this book, but this book does cover it. And mainly because my background in radio, and Tesla is such a huge figure in radio, as far as his inventions. But what Tesla, supported alternating current, which is AC, and Edison supported direct current, which is DC. Now, alternating current is deadly, and it's so what Edison did is to prove his point that it was deadly. He would fry animals. He would take donkeys and dogs and cats and give exhibitions showing how it could kill, be dangerous. And they even took it to the point where they made the first electrocution, the first execution of an electric chair, which failed horribly. And I guess they had to repeatedly electrocute the man until he died. But it just didn't happen at once like they thought it would.
So we know that reputations can be built in a positive way, or they can be knocked down and have a negative light. So, you know, guard it with your life, as the book says. I wholeheartedly agree that sometimes reputation is all that we have. Um, but what happens when your reputation or others maybe don't have a good reputation with others?
You
What
you end up associating with someone that does and ride on their coattails,
Okay, kind of
which
like you
is,
and me.
yeah, who's
Um,
riding on whose coattails.
yeah, that's for another episode.
But
But
yeah, I hope I didn't steal your thunder. The book did talk about that. They say perhaps you've already stained your reputation so that you are prevented from establishing a new one. In such cases, it's wise to associate with someone whose image counteracts your own, using their good name to whitewash and elevate yours.
well, I think that's good advice because there are good reputations, there are bad reputations. Some of it's accurate, some of it not so accurate. Um, how you see yourself as well could be very much different than reputation. So we'll give you something to think about. And if you're not happy with your current reputation, hopefully we gave you some insight on how to change that. Um, so I think reputation can work for you or against you.
Absolutely. What about reversal of the law? Do you remember what that was?
No.
Reversal of the law.
Did you see that? Did you hear that? I have a Spanish accent. There is no possible reversal. Reputation is critical. There are no exceptions to this law. This might be one of the only laws in the 48 that doesn't have a reversal. It's very interesting.
You know, so I think the takeaway from that is since you you can't change how others view you. You know, once they see you at a negative in a negative light, it's very difficult to get yourself back into the positive light. So it's better just to cut bait and start new.
Absolutely.
Go somewhere else. And you know, your Spanish accent is coming along very well. I mean, you've been in Miami all your life, so it's bound to happen.
Hey man, what can I say? Yeah, so reputation, it's a big deal. In fact, I mean, look now, all the internet companies, one of the big services is reputation management. There's actual people you can hire to go and clean up all the negative comments about you, to respond back. Now, one technique now is if someone makes a negative comment, is they have people go and answer and respond to all the negative comments and try to counteract it and clean up their reputation, or they actually go in, find it, and ask you to remove it from your blog.
So what about those people who think, hey, you know what? I'm great. People just love me. And I'm not talking about myself, although I guess I do think that a little bit. But it's primarily with my kids. I know that they look at me like Superman.
Yep.
So, but what about, how do you accurately judge your own reputation? I mean, how do you
you set up Google alerts, so if you see any trash being talked about you can nick it in the bud. And by the way, my kids don't refer to me as Superman; they refer to me as Lex Luthor or Heisenberg. Is there something wrong with that?
You know, I'm seeing a trend here, because remember when I was a kid, when we were kids, I was always Batman and you were Robin,
yep,
or Spider-Man and Super Spidey.
Now Superman and Lex Luthor.
I'm seeing a trend.
Yes, John, you burned off my hair when I was a kid in a laboratory accident. And or what it was, the fire burned the hair off, and then you blew out the fire, and it blew all my hair away.
How many times do I have to apologize for that? Okay. Well, we've talked about reputation. Guard it with your life. We've talked about the power of labels. What to do when you have a bad reputation. Just cut loose and don't try to change it, because you're really not going to change someone else's opinion very easily. I think we've covered the law. It's not a very long chapter at all. I mean, we talked about the main story in there was with Edison, and Edison was a son of a bitch, man. There's some other stories in the next law coming up that also talk about Edison. But this guy, when we're kids, we're taught, you invented the light bulb. You fail so many times, and there's so many, and there's so many quotes and everything that make this guy look like he was awesome, but he was really just a good promoter. I mean, he knew how to market himself, and he knew how to destroy the reputation of those around him. In fact, I guess it's from the next one, but I can mention it briefly. He was supposed to share the Nobel Prize with him and Tesla, but he figured that his reputation was so much better than Tesla that he didn't want to elevate Tesla's reputation, so he denied it and turned it down. And so Tesla would not get the notoriety and be put up on the same pedestal as himself. Yeah, it's I found that very interesting, and as you said, we're taught one thing through history, and then we find other things out as we go along and read other accounts of history. So guard your reputation.
Yep. The only other story that comes to mind too that I jotted down was let's see. It says, make your reputation simple and base it on one sterling quality. This single quality, efficiency, say, or seductiveness, become a kind of calling card that announces your presence and places others under a spell. A reputation for honesty will allow you to practice all manner of deception. Nice. Casanova used his reputation as a great seducer to pave his way for future conquest. Women who had heard of his powers became immensely curious and wanted to discover for themselves what had made him so romantically successful. I think there's a business in that.
Yeah. Well, you said that there's already people who are in business of cleaning up people's reputation.
Yeah, I'm talking about
online.
for seducing women. That's I haven't seen that out there yet.
Well, don't buy the 100 different ways to pick up girls, because we know that book doesn't
101
work.
pickup lines. Yeah, we tried that.
I was
Doesn't
thinking
work.
too. Growing up, I was not in many fights, but it wasn't. I wasn't 100. I didn't have 100% knockout rate or anything like that. But I only fought a few times, and every time I did, I mean, I think people saw a change in me. In fact, people said, "Oh my God, you were like the Incredible Hulk. You changed from this mild-mannered guy to this monster." And the way I am as a person, I am very mild-mannered, cool, calm, and collected, I like to think. But these guys would, pick on me, and I'd reach a certain point, and I'd just let them have it. And I didn't give up, and I fought to win. And that reputation, spread. After one fight, no one messed with me after that. And I think that worked in my favor, because I was a small kid.
I was just telling my kids this story. When I was in ninth grade, I had a friend named Pete. You know Pete,
Yeah,
the
Pete.
bodybuilder guy. So Pete could be kind of a jerk. He's one of those friends that, once he got around a group of other kids, he would pick on me to try to make himself look better, right? So we were in English class every day, and it started off innocently enough, and back and forth stuff. But it started coming where it was an everyday thing, where he would be, "Hey Tom, are you gay?" And he'd get like some other kid to go on it, and he'd keep on badgering me. And this happened for over the course of months. And finally, to the point where I think it was starting to start get stomach aches over it, and worrying about going to school, and it was a form of bullying. And one day in the middle of class, he goes, "Hey, write on a piece of paper that you're not gay." He's laughing, and other kids are chuckling. I go, "Okay, I'll give it to you at the end of class." So I pretended to write it on a piece of paper. At the end of class, I stood up. I said, "Oh, here's your note." I crumpled in my right hand, and I punched him in the face about 10 times. And immediately, the whole class, whoa, whoa, and they sent me to the principal. They didn't suspend me or anything. I think he, back then, that was a way to standing up to a bully. And after that, no one ever messed with me again in high school. I don't know if you knew that story, because I don't know if I was hanging around with you at that time that much, but it's it definitely bolstered my credibility and my reputation.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how that works. You stand up to a bully one time, and it scares off all the other bullies, because they know you're not easy prey. But yeah, you got a reputation out of that.
All right, so rate us on iTunes. Check out a Swift Kick in the Ass .com, and check out our other podcast. And if you like it, give us a rating, tell your friends, and check out our website. Download your free spinning tool. And thanks for listening.
Welcome to a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. Thank you for listening to a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we ask you to please give us a review in iTunes. Also, head over to swiftkickintheass.com to get a free copy of the Simple Spelling Tool.